today we're going to talk about the self. But before we do that, I've wanted to do this for 2 episodes now, and that is talk about what I think the witch is. Because we've covered that, obviously, in your witch episode, and you've asked me, but I've never really responded to that. So I just want to say, my first experience with any witch, like with you, was with the film The Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. And there we were introduced to 2 different witches, the Wicked Witch of the North, West, Witch.
Which witch is which?
Which?
The Wicked Witch of the West and the Wicked Witch, the Glinda, the Good Witch of the North.
Of the North, okay. That was my first introduction to this idea of witches, and honestly, outside of just the normal routine of things, I never really gave it much thought up until I acted in a play in high school called The Crucible by Arthur Miller. Mm-hmm. And that started to bring home the idea to me. And then I kind of left that alone, too. It went to the back of my head, and I didn't give it much thought from there. And then, of all places, I ended up in a town called Reims, or Reims, in France, where Joan of Arc was martyred. So while over the course of my lifetime it hasn't always been there, at least up until I met you, mm-hmm. That's been my experience of the witch. I never assigned a value. I almost said I never gave it any value, but that's not true. I recognized a bit what that meant, but being a man and being involved in all the man stuff that I was, doing as a man, it never came forefront until you and I now are together, and I listen to you and hear what you have to say, all the books, all the literature that's out there. I've come to a better understanding. And I know it's not Disney. I know it's not the potions and the pointy hat, and which all of those have a place, mm-hmm. right?
They do.
Which we could talk about in a subsequent episode. And I'm taking up way too much time for this, but that's where I'm coming from there, so you understand.
So who is she in the now for you?
Well, she's you in the now for me, and she is a soul recoverer, S-O-U-L, recoverer for me. Mm-hmm. And that's done through means that I don't understand, and I don't think I need to understand, because once we understand magic, it just becomes a trick. Anything you want to add to that?
Just that in The Wizard of Oz, there was a third witch, and it was the witch under the house. And I think for me, because I have a different understanding of the Wicked Witch now and Glinda the Good Witch, that what we're doing, what I'm bringing forth, what my part of bringing this forth is all about, is I'm ready for the house to be lifted off of the witch.
Go a step deeper. What does that mean?
What
does that reveal?
The weight. It reveals her truth. It reveals her soul. It reveals her essence. It reveals the self, which is so beautiful that we're going into the self.
So before we can get into this whole concept of relational communication, we need to understand what we're bringing to the relationship to begin with, and what we're bringing to that relationship is the self. I've listened to you apply this idea that the witch cannot practice without a comprehension, an appreciation, a gratitude, an understanding of the self.
I don't think that she can practice authentically without an understanding of the self.
Oh, that's a great word for that. And that word's also going to work into how I try to go through and define the self as well, and how we're hoping that this resonates with you too. Mm-hmm. So in classic relational communication theory, the self is described on 3 different levels. Okay, and those levels are obviously our own perception of who we are, and that who we are, that our thing, that to be conjugation is important there, because we have a tendency to define ourselves by who we think we are. I am a teacher. I am your companion. I am Jack's traveling companion. Where in reality, It's just I am, period. And I'll get back to that here in just a second. So if you could imagine a triangle with you on top, it's our perception of who we are, okay, or who we think we are, which gets even more scary as we go. The second leg of that triangle, of that triad, is the evaluations that we have received from other people. We're all trying to elicit that, especially like in social media or when we're socializing. Hey, what do you think about? I saw this movie. What did you think? Well, in that thinking, in that feedback has a tendency to go back and confirm the self we think we are based on somebody else's evaluation. And that sounds like the craziest thing in the world, right? I haven't gotten to that one yet, but still the fact that theoretically, what the theory held was that we define ourselves by what we think we are, by who other people have expressed to us who we are. And now here's the wildest one. The third one is what we think other people think about us. And we do that constantly. We do that through their nonverbal manifestations of approval, of happiness, or of rejection, or anger. I went through high school watching my father across the breakfast table scowl at me. And I thought for sure he had this disdain for me because of how he looked at me. And so here I am. I am defining myself by what I think he thinks of me I never had the courage to ask him, why are you so angry? Until a few days before he died. We had that conversation. And he was so sorry. He didn't know that that's how he looked to me. And he said, Eric, I was never angry with you. It was life. It was everything else that was going on. And I'll spare you the intimacy of that. But that's what we do. Based on the assumptions that we're making, we have a tendency to draw in what we think other people are thinking about. I've done that with you.
We've done that together.
It goes back and forth. I think everybody does, because once you've reached this shorthand level of intimacy, we think, oh, I've seen that face before. I've heard what was said with that face before, so I'm automatically going to default, which is it's a terrible, dangerous, but it's a strong word that I'm going to use in this as well. I'll default to, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
So based on those three concepts, which I'm going to deconstruct here in just a second, how does the magic factor into those three cells?
The I am, the what other people are thinking, and what I think other people are thinking.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the magic is the I am. Because that's that selffulness. I am. And it's not a prideful I am. It is the I am. The word that's coming right now to me is imperfect. Because I am perfect. Right? It's being able to embrace who you are. The situation with your dad, how beautiful that worked out. But the idea...
30 years later.
Yes, but how beautiful it was said. Because could you imagine both of you never having that answer in the physical, not having that spoken? The spoken word is so perfect, and that's where the magic comes in. I think also the magic is in when we recognize, oh, what is the root of why I'm thinking this? So for your dad, it was rooted into something else, and he had no idea. A lot of people don't even recognize how their body language, which is part of the communication, is coming across. And they don't know the root of why what they're saying or how they're responding or what they're communicating is happening. The magic comes in to the selffulness, understanding the self.
So the 4 agreements are pretty basic. They begin with be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't assume, and always do your best. And fundamentally, that sounds
Easy peasy.
right. But let me go through and maybe take those a step higher in applying them to the model of the self and how that gets into this idea of selffulness. Defined as I am is an interesting conjugation of the first person to be, I am. We know it on so many different levels. In French, it is je suis. Yo soy in Spanish, and we take that to the Latin degree, we end up on the name of Jesus, who indicated that he is the great I am. And what I think is interesting about that, not to get too churchy woo-woo on this, was that he was just simply defining himself through that conjugation of the first person, conjugation of the verb to be, I am. Well, to be impeccable with your word, Ruiz explains, is to be impeccable with that am part. I am. I am my word. My word is me, and one of the agreements I need to make with myself is to be impeccable with that. And what a lot of people will default to, which isn't a bad default, is, well, we're talking about integrity and honesty and things of that nature. But there's also authenticity with that. Okay, to be impeccable with my word is to represent myself at my basis of what I feel, of what I value, of what I desire, of what I want, need, those types of things there. That becomes that impeccability. Ruiz defines impeccability as without sin. Mm-hmm. And then he defines sin as it's a sin against yourself. Mm-hmm. So for me to lose my authenticity and to fake it becomes a sin against myself. Never assume is one of the hardest agreements that I've had to make with myself. You take the assumptions away, and suddenly that part of the you triangle can't stand anymore, because the assumptions that we're making about what we think other people are thinking about us go away. Okay. Now, the other side also goes away when we don't take things personally. So somebody goes through and says, wow, you're really smart. And we accept what they say. We accept that evaluation. Ruiz says, well, then they've hooked us in. They have our attention because we have agreed with that, with their assessment. It's not our agreement anymore. It's theirs. I think you are smart. Oh, I agree with you there. If we decide not to take anything personally, we're no longer bound by what other people say to us. We can accept it or reject it. We can accept it and think about it critically and go through and say, okay, I might agree with that, or not. The trick is to get into that critical process of having that dialogue happening within your brain.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also important to note that there's a fine line between saying, I think you are so smart, and I think you are so smart. Right?
Yeah.
Because there is something important about recognizing the qualities in someone else, especially when we're struggling to find the selffulness, the I am within ourselves. Okay. It's hard sometimes to not have somebody recognize our gifts. And as a mom, as a parent,
yes,
I want to say, you are so beautiful. You are so smart. You are perfect. You are whole and complete right where you are. And that isn't to throw out the hook and reel someone in to be my way, but I think it's important to recognize there is a fine line.
Yes, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because that line exists with the person, with the receiver. The receiver can go through and say, well, thank you, Julia. I appreciate your recognizing that within me, as opposed to saying, wow, Julia really thinks I'm something else.
Or, no, I'm not. Not really.
Right.
That's not me. Yeah. I don't think so, right? There's a whole muddy mess down here at the bottom of the triangle.
Yes, there is. Part of that mess gets into when somebody says, well, I don't think you're as smart as you think you are. Or one of my favorites, you're never really good at math. Okay, or you can't sing like you think you can sing, or those kinds of things. And we have a tendency to hang on to those ones more than we do the positive feedback that we get, right? Well, the whole trick about this idea of not taking anything personally is not only should we not take the bad stuff personally, we shouldn't take the good stuff personally either, because both of them will kind of lock us into it. Now, it doesn't mean that we can go through and say, you think that I am blank. Well, let me evaluate that. Have I had anybody else say that? Do I have any evidence in my life of being that? Yeah, I do. Okay, yes. Well, I thank you for recognizing that. But not taking anything personally takes that out from that three-legged stool of you and leaves us back with that great
I am.
Sounds much easier than it is.
Yes, because most of us don't know who we are, and we're looking for ourselves outside of ourselves. Like the I am is out here,
Yeah.
and it's not, and that's where the witch comes in and says, come back into yourself.
When I retired from filmmaking, I was a director of photography, which is kind of the top of that department. And from there, I went into teaching. I got my degree and went into teaching in higher ed. And when I got my business cards for that, I read that, and it said associate professor, or maybe it was assistant professor. And I read that, and I thought, man, that sure doesn't define who I am, because I'm a director of photography, thank you very much. It was ridiculous, because I was defining myself by who I thought I was involved in film production, or at that point, who I thought I was involved in higher education. And that is always in flux. It's always changing. I mean, it better be if I'm improving, if I'm working my craft and doing what I need to be doing to improve my interaction behind the camera or in the classroom, then I can't ever really pin that down.
Nope.
It can't define yourself by your title. I have a hard time even defining myself by the honor title of dad, because that is constantly changing as well. And while I am a parent, I can't, in my authenticity, I define myself as a parent, because I do define myself as a dad.
I am a mom.
Yeah. Those are worthy of our aspiration.
I am a parent.
Okay.
I am a witch. I am a woman. Right? Not in a selfish way, but
No.
a selffulness way.
None of those are singular.
No.
Those are all become a composite of who you are. I guess maybe that's what I'm trying to reach for here is I am not any one thing. And I'm glad I can identify that I'm a dad, that I'm a parent, that I'm a granddad, that I am...
I am a grandma.
Yeah.
Yes.
That I am your companion, that I am Jack's buddy, his travel buddy. And those are the things that are worth my consideration and worth the work that I put into those relationships. I think anything else that a title, anything that makes me, puts me out there in a way that could become inauthentic is probably not the best way to identify myself. Does that mean I know who I am? I don't know that I will ever arrive at that. When I was diagnosed with my terminal lymphoma, people would say, well, don't let your cancer define who you are. And I would say, well, good luck with that. Because with me, it's all throughout my body. It's in every organ that I have. It makes me look at what I put into my mouth, and it makes me look at what comes out of my body. Scrutinizing. It makes me go through and have isotopes glowing throughout my system so they can define where the cancer is. I mean, it's so invasive that people can't help but feel that disease defines who they are. And I have to say that I think one of the reasons why I'm here on this bench talking to you is that I've resisted that definition.
I think it was our first episode, maybe it was our second episode, we talked about this is work.
Yes.
This is arduous. This is a lot. We've just opened up a lot, and it can feel overwhelming. And I just want to say, it's hard work. It's not easy, but it is simple. And it is a returning back to the self. all of the I ams are part of the alchemy. They become ingredients to the elixir of who we are as we're refining the base of this life into the choice individual that we truly are. And it all comes back to remembering who we are. It's that alchemization of the truth. There are some practices too to fall back in love with yourself, which is a very difficult task, to come back to the I am. So we're understanding the self at the level of I am a self.
Right. Well, I mean, there's, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And in order to understand deeper, I am going to go within.
Okay.
Okay.
Now that we can go within, we're going to add another layer to that. And that is with the other, with the self and with the other, as those two concepts cross each other within that Venn diagram as they cross, that's where we get meaning. So we're going to talk a little bit about shared meaning and how that goes. Is that okay?
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yes. And I will just throw in one more bit of woo. And our natal blueprint does give us an insight of all of this as well.
Now, I had no idea what a natal blueprint was until I met Julia, and maybe you don't either. So I'm going to ask you maybe to write something up about what that is, and we'll post that also on the Facebook page.
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks for watching. We put Jack to sleep. I hope we didn't put you to sleep.
Oh my gosh.